Welcome to this evening's Meet Melbourne Online session on the Bachelor of Commerce. My name is Josephine Pope and I'm a Senior Selection and Recruitment Officer with the Faculty of Business and Economics. Before I go on, I would like to show my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, of elders past, present and emerging, on which this meeting takes place. So this evening I will be joined by Professor Paul Jensen, the Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Business and Economics and the Program Director for the Bachelor of Commerce. And I'll also a little bit later be joined by some current students so they can have a chat to us about their experience studying the Bachelor of Commerce. And together we hope to give you a bit of an understanding of why the BCom at the University of Melbourne will set you on the path to a truly global career. Now, throughout the session, you'll have the opportunity to pose questions to the panel or a group of staff members that are offline that are ready to answer any of your questions about the Bachelor of Commerce and studying at the University of Melbourne. So throughout the session, if you would like to enter your questions into the Q&A and they'll get an answer to you as quick as possible. So Paul, if you could join me on screen, and I thought we would start with a pretty simple question. A pretty simple one is, why are studies in commerce so important in 2021? Oh, sorry, you're just on mute. Sorry, Paul. A very 2020.
Thank you, Josephine, for pointing that out. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for the question. I'm delighted to be here this evening. So yes, why choose commerce? So that's the first thing many high school students say to me, and there are a lot of fantastic reasons why, and important reasons why studying commerce is a great career choice for you, but also a great choice in helping you understand how the world works. So one of the things we do and we really focus on at the University of Melbourne is ensuring that you get a toolkit that'll help you solve key business challenges and really make a difference for society, for public policy and for corporations and organisations more generally. So it is a really important toolkit, and we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about the curriculum and what's in the curriculum that'll help you solve those key business challenges. But I think that's probably the most important point to note in your question, Josephine.
Thank you. So how does with the Melbourne model, so how does the BCom fit into the Melbourne model, and how does it make studies at Melbourne a little bit different for commerce?
Well, so one of the things we do have, as Josephine has alluded to, we have a core set of courses and subjects that every BCom student must take, and that's across the entire spectrum from finance to economics to quantitative methods. But we also have, a really interesting set of extracurricular activities, and we can talk about those in a little bit. But we wanted to let everyone know just how important the student experience is that you get at the University of Melbourne. So I think, the fact that we do have this very unique student experience with lots of work integrated learning opportunities. We are a global university and we have been for a very long time. So we've got this amazing network of alumni from all around the world in 54 different countries. We've got very well-rounded graduates as well. And you get an opportunity to learn from some of the best academics in their field. So we're passionate and committed to this idea that our teaching should be research-led. In other words, the people who are doing outstanding world-class research today will be teaching you that material in the class tomorrow. So that's kind of where we're coming from in terms of the way we've structured the degree. And just to go back to that question that Josephine asked up front about the breadth. So we have curriculum, the core, but we also have these breadth subjects for you to take. And so that gives you a very unique opportunity where we compel. In other words, we make it compulsory for all students to take subjects from other faculty areas. So not just giving you that deep, specialised connection to the commerce disciplines of economics and finance and accounting, but also allowing you to go off and study philosophy or languages or music. And some of those things could be your passion. They could be things you're extremely passionate about, like music, or they could be things that you want to explore a little bit further because you think, well, how does finance and something like biological science interact? Is there a space to help me understand sustainability issues where I can understand some connection or connectivity between finance and science? So that really gives you a very unique opportunity, I think, to explore your interests, but also develop a really unique set of skills and training as you study.
Yeah, and so we'll sort of move into the next slide where we do sort of look at some entry requirements, the course structure. And as we got here, as you can see, you're talking about breadth, but sort of one of the really important parts, I suppose, in what we feel with our Bachelor of Commerce is those fundamental concepts, so those compulsory subjects. So what are some of those subjects that students take?
Right, yeah, so the 7 core subjects relate to economics. So you've got to take micro and macroeconomics at first year level. You have to take principles of finance. You have to take a principles of accounting subject called accounting, reporting and analysis. And you have to take a management subject called organisational behaviour. So giving you or having to study that core means that you're really across all of those very diverse areas that are essential to understanding contemporary business and government issues. And so that's why we force everyone to take those specific subjects so that you do get that very, very important cross-section of those important fundamentals.
Now, we don't do double degrees at the University of Melbourne, but we do double majors. So can students take a double major in the BCom?
Indeed, yes. So we do allow the opportunity to take double majors. So, many students will come in having a very clear idea that they want to study accounting and finance. But also we have the flexibility within the degree to allow students who come in their first year not knowing what they want to major in, and which is totally okay. It's quite common. And it's also very acceptable for students to come in not having a clear idea what they'd like to do, what they like to major in, but taking that first year or that first 3 semesters even to have a very good look at all those fundamental subjects, those core subjects, and then making some decisions about what they'd like to major in after that. So you get that flexibility to do it, and you could end up doing finance and marketing as your 2 majors. So we do have a lot of flexibility in the way you structure the degree as well, and that really gives you the opportunity to examine your own preferences and your own interests and the things you're really good at, and make sure that you select majors that really suit you and will help you give you the best opportunity for a great job in the future.
And like with a lot of things in this world, there are exceptions to the rules. So actuarial studies, with the structure that it brings, is probably one that's just that little bit different, where we do get students to start that from the beginning, and it's one that is a single major due to accreditation requirements from the accreditation body.
That's correct. So a lot of that is imposed on us by the accreditation agency, which is the Actuaries Institute. And so many of those subjects that that you have as breadth that you would normally take from non-commerce disciplines aren't allowed in actuarial studies, essentially because you need to do a whole lot of maths and statistics subjects as your breadth subjects in order to satisfy those criteria for actuarial accreditation. And so that means it is a much more structured program, and there's far fewer degrees of freedom, if you like, or flexibility that you can use to choose to study in diverse areas. But still, there are still some opportunities to do that if you really want. And there are also opportunities to take a concurrent diploma, graduate diploma as well.
And one of the good things about how we do have actuarial studies structured or embedded in our BCom at the University of Melbourne is, if a student does begin the actuarial studies major and decides maybe not for them, whether they find that the flexibility of being able to do a double major in a couple of other disciplines, they don't need to start again. They can stay in the BCom. They just need to structure up change their study plan a little bit, but they're certainly not starting all over again.
No, absolutely correct. You do have that ability to try before you buy, if you like. So you don't really commit until you get into your second year. By the end of your second year, it is pretty hard to just restructure your study plan and achieve another major instead of actuarial studies, because you've already done so many of those core and elective subjects you need in order to get the major in actuarial studies. So it might mean a bit of backtracking, but if you decided after your first semester or two that actuarial studies wasn't for you, then of course, absolutely, you do have the flexibility and the freedom to be able to reposition yourself and then start again, but not starting from scratch. That's the important point. All of those subjects that you have already taken will give you credit.
Yeah, excellent. So one more thing I just wanted to ask before we move on to breadth, which is always my favourite topic, is with a double major, that doesn't extend the course at all. It's still 3 years.
No, that's correct. Yeah, if you you need to structure things carefully, you can make mistakes on the way, which mean, oh, cool, if I really want to do that double major now, I might have to stay an extra semester or take an extra subject or two. But absolutely, you can do a double major within the 3-year period, and almost whatever combination you want of different double majors.
Excellent. So, as I said, breadth is always something I find quite fascinating because talking to students, they probably have an idea of what commerce is and what the sort of subjects they'll study. And one of the real features, as we said earlier, is with the Melbourne model, is this opportunity for students to look sort of out of their own sort of immediate skill set. So with breadth, so do all BCom students need to do breadth?
They do, yes. So it's a very important fundamental of the Melbourne model, as you mentioned, and it gives students a lot of choice, really, to either follow their passions or thinking about their graduate studies pathway or thinking about concurrent diplomas. And I'm really proud of this as well. I think it's a fantastic aspect of the University of Melbourne undergraduate degrees because I really do think there's power in specialisation. So I've specialised in the field of economics and econometrics over many, many years of study, but I've also gained enormous benefit from studying outside those areas in music and in history and in philosophy. And I think, in many ways, they're the most important parts of what I've done because there are lots of people who have specialised in economics and econometrics, but not that many people who have got those outside interests that I do, that I've been able to develop over many years, and I think really make me, quite unique. And ultimately, we're all very unique, and what we want to do is find ways in which we can, nurture and develop that uniqueness. And then hopefully find a place for it in the world and in the job market in particular. So we do have some ideas there about passions that you could explore outside of your commerce areas. We have a lot of people who are fantastic musicians who are studying the BCom. They're off doing jazz improvisation subjects. We have a lot of people who are very interested in languages, for example. And so they're, as well as doing principles of finance and algorithmic trading, are off, studying languages. And so I think it's a fantastic aspect of the degree.
And so are these subjects easier, would you think, or are these just as challenging as some of those commerce subjects?
No, they're not easier at all. The idea is not that we're giving students an opportunity to take easy subjects outside of commerce. These are, because the University of Melbourne is such an outstanding place, the people taking these subjects in psychology or in the conservatorium or in the faculty of science are world's best scholars themselves, and so they're taking subjects and leading subjects that will be interesting and rigorous and challenging as well. So it is definitely a bit of a misconception that people see some of those subjects and think, oh, that'll be easy, I'll take an easy subject and go off and study creative writing or something. That's not the way we think about these things at all. Our scholars in creative writing are world class, and they will seriously challenge you. And you should be prepared to be challenged when you take their subjects.
I suppose one of the real features of breadth for us in the Bachelor of Commerce is how they do develop our students' soft skills and I guess those different types of skills. And another important part of us doing that is our student experience and experiential learning team, which offer a wide variety of different services and experiences. So I guess for my question for you, Paul, is why are these experiences really important for students?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there. They all help in different ways, but they all help you develop your soft skills. So what do we mean by soft skills? Well, a lot of that is to do with the way you communicate your ideas, and some of that could be in the written word, but some of it could also be in the spoken word. And you don't necessarily get a lot of skills and training within the curriculum to do that stuff. You do a little bit, but what we've done is built a whole lot of these opportunities that are kind of wraparounds, if you like, for the curriculum, where you do get to develop those skills writ large. And so that could be through the clubs and societies, where you've got to work with your student peers to come up with or support some sort of initiative. It could be through, industry exposure through our startup competitions. So we have a number of these competitions where students will form teams of 4 people who work to try and crack a particular case. And that case will normally be sponsored by an industry partner, and they'll come to the students and they'll say, look, here's a problem, a real world problem we want you to solve. And the students then coalesce around these groups of 4, and they tend to have someone who's really good at marketing and someone who's really good at finance, and they'll all get together and then work on trying to find a solution to that case. And they then present to the executives from that company, and the executives will deliberate and choose a winner, choose which teams actually come up with the best solution to their particular problem. And that's a fantastic way for you to learn about how to work in teams, and how do you solve disputes within teams when you're working under a tight time pressure. How do you, who shows leadership in order to make sure the team can get back together after they've had a disagreement about how to solve this problem. And then how do you successfully present in a compelling way to executives to make sure that the quality of your idea is understood and embraced by the company. So they're all really important skills. As I said, you do learn some of them within the curriculum itself, but most of the time in the curriculum, you'll be head down trying to figure out how to solve complex technical finance or accounting or economic problems. And this gives you an opportunity to then apply those skills to the real world.
And so were we able to roll out some of those opportunities in 2020 when we were working in a predominantly online environment?
We were, actually. So it was really challenging to do it, and we weren't sure it was going to work. I mean, none of us chose to go online in the way we did in such a short period of time. It was a rude shock to the academics as much as it was to the students. And but we thought, look, we really want to have a go at working some of these competitions and some of these industry mentoring and networking events and try and do them online. Let's see if we can. I personally was reasonably sceptical that they would work or that they'd be successful. And of course, thankfully, I was proven wrong. They were incredibly successful. Students really, there's a lot of demand for those opportunities, and the feedback we had and the engagement with industry was incredible. Industry really stepped up to the plate. We had so many businesses wanting to get involved in these kind of experiential learning opportunities and continuing the hard work we've done with them over many, many years. And they turned out to be incredibly successful, so much so that, we might think about in the future having a mix of face-to-face and online activities like that.
That's amazing. So I suppose a big part of why we're doing these sorts of things is sort of those pathways for our students when they do graduate. So we've obviously got a really interesting list there of different sort of destinations our students sort of end up. But what are some of the interesting career outcomes that you've heard, Paul?
Oh, there's so many of them, Josephine. I really, as part of my role as program director, I do spend quite a lot of time with individual students over the course of their degree. And, I always encourage them to keep in touch with them because I love hearing what they end up doing. I mean, it's just so exciting and stimulating for me to see students 3 or 5 years out of their degree and what they end up doing, what they end up really enjoying doing, and how they're sort of transforming the world. We've given you just a flavour of those sorts of opportunities. And of course, many of them relate to companies that you already know in banking or in management consulting and investment banking and things like that. And they're the more obvious ones. They're very well curated pathways, if you like. So, we have many of those big companies from the accounting firms and the professional service and investment banking firms on campus every semester, talking to students and talking to students about internship opportunities and about graduate employment opportunities. But there are so many interesting pathways and outcomes for our students. And I think really, ultimately, that is, one of the greatest things about the degree, that we're able to train people for so many diverse roles. It's not as if, if you were doing an engineering degree, for example, you come out and you're trained to be an engineer. When you come out and when you graduate with a BCom, you're trained to do just about everything. And so that's a wonderful position to be in. You can really go off. I mean, you can't go off and build planes, of course, or build bridges. We wouldn't advise that. But you are trained to do so many things. Working in companies that are building or running planes or building bridges. So you could work in those companies, not just doing the engineering around it.
Well, speaking of engineering and building bridges, it's probably a good time for us to talk about our graduate degree packages. So one of the things we talked about a little bit earlier is that we don't have double degrees. So what we have is sort of our model being a little bit different. So our graduate degree packages, or GDPs as they're sometimes called. So what are they, Paul?
Well, they are an opportunity for really outstanding students to have a guaranteed pathway into a graduate degree of their choice. Or the two options we have up there are the JD, which is the graduate law degree that we offer at the University of Melbourne. So many of those other institutions that do have double degrees, you would be doing a Bachelor of Commerce or a Bachelor of Economics or a Bachelor of Arts with an undergraduate degree in law. So we don't do that. We only have this Juris Doctor, which is the graduate degree in law. And what we do is provide an opportunity to give you a guaranteed pathway into that degree or into the Masters of Engineering. Now, we only have a very small number of slots for that graduate degree program or those graduate degree programs. That's why the marks are so high. But for many students, that's exactly what they want, and they're capable of achieving those marks. And they do get one of these GDP offers. Now, of course, that doesn't mean if you don't get the 96 to get a GDP offer, it doesn't mean you can't do engineering at the University of Melbourne afterwards. It just means you need to go through the Bachelor of Commerce and then reapply for that Master of Engineering once you've completed, and your application would then be assessed on your marks.
Yeah, and so if a student was to sort of go through this path and then halfway through their Bachelor of Commerce discover a passion for a different area, which is by all means something that can certainly happen with how we have it structured, is that fine? Can the student sort of change their mind and go into follow a different path?
Yes, they can, absolutely. So you're not bound to that. There's an offer there, but you don't need to accept it. It's not binding in that sense.
Fantastic. So it's just sort of a way, I guess, if for a student to assure their place in a graduate program, but they're not bound to that in any way.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I guess some entry requirements. So we do have an audience of both international and domestic students. So I guess probably one of the big things that'll stick out there, particularly for our domestic students, is the guaranteed ATAR. Like, sort of the difference between a guarantee and a minimum ATAR.
Or as they say, a guarantee just means you will absolutely get an offer into the program if you get above or 95 or above. And as implied by a minimum, it means that once we'd offered all of our places in 2021, that turned out to be the low point, if you like. So anyone who got under the 91 wouldn't have got an offer, but anyone who got above 91 or above would in fact get an offer. So that's just the space in which all of our offers take place. And
we do require mathematics in order to come into the Bachelor of Commerce. Is that for all students, regardless of what major they'd like to do?
That is correct. It's actually all students. If you're studying your VCE, you must take VCU units 3 and 4 and get a study score of at least 25 in maths methods or specialist maths. And the reason is that all students have to do the quantitative methods subject, which is in the core, and introductory microeconomics. And those two subjects actually do have quite a high level of statistics and probability and calculus. And so you need to have done that base level of mathematics in order to give yourself the best chance of doing well in those subjects.
Yeah, and although, I mean, it's a great experience for students if they've done economics or accounting in high school, but those concepts we don't need as a prerequisite. It is just mathematics.
Yes, that's right. You don't need to have studied those subjects. I mean, many of the students find that the first few weeks of studying at university, if they've done economics at high school, there can be a lot of revision there, which is great. But you certainly don't need to have done that at school to get into the degree.
And now also what we do have for our domestic students is a program called Access Melbourne. So this is a way for us to recognise the additional circumstances in a student's situation. So with Access Melbourne, so these are for some of the figures for 2021, just mindful with the entry requirements they are at this stage for 2021. But certainly for Access Melbourne, so these are a way for us to be able to as I probably should throw to you, Paul, but I mean, why do we have Access Melbourne?
Oh, look, they're a very, very important pathway into the degree or into all of our undergraduate degrees to make sure that students who are coming from a disadvantaged background, and that could be because of financial considerations, or it could be they come from a rural or isolated area and it's very hard to do well in those locations because of the fact you don't have a peer group of students who are pushing you along, and perhaps your teachers at school haven't had much experience in helping students get very high ATARs. And so there are lots of reasons why your ATAR might be lower than it otherwise would be if you'd been in a fantastic, nurturing environment. And so any of those factors might affect your ATAR. And so we've got this pathway called Access Melbourne, which helps us manage and deal with those factors for students. It is a big part of the degree, and so a quite high proportion of our students overall come through that Access Melbourne pathway, not through the other pathway. So yeah, it's a really fundamentally important part of who we are and our identity, and the students and the diversity of students that we want to embrace at the University of Melbourne. Now,
just finally, we have as I said, an international audience. So we also have some additional entry requirements that we guarantee. So we do have A levels, so ABB is what we're looking for, and also Trinity College. So probably for the audience there's probably quite a few of you that are from maybe studying something else, one of our other international qualifications. You can have a look at all those entry requirements are on our website if you're looking for further details. So one of the other things, one last question for you, Paul, what I get a lot with these entry requirements in the guarantee is that people probably sometimes don't quite believe me when I do say that they're guaranteed a place. So can we reassure all of our international students that if they do get these A levels or these Trinity or IB results, or if they're studying Australian Year 12, that they are guaranteed this place in the BCom if they do meet these prerequisite requirements?
I can confirm that they will be guaranteed a place if they can make those requirements. Absolutely. Thanks, Josephine.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. That was an excellent breakdown of the Bachelor of Commerce. So I'm going to ask now some of the students who are our current students to join me on screen, because I think they're probably going to have some really interesting things to talk about. So some really interesting stories, so we can ask them some of our questions. Hello all, how are we?
I'm good.
Hello.
Hi, Paul. Hi.
Thank you for joining me. Now I'm going to start with a really, really simple question. Well, I hope it's simple. So why did you decide to study the BCom? Felix, I might start with you.
Yeah, well, for me, I was convinced for the longest time that I would do engineering in uni. All throughout school, I thought I'd do engineering. And then I kind of realized that I don't know why I wanted to do engineering whatsoever. And I was enjoying year 12 economics a lot. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do commerce because it has an economics major. And I thought, may as well give it a shot. So I was quite wishy-washy when I made my decision. I wasn't really too sure on anything, but I liked year 12 economics, and I saw that sort of commerce offered economics, and I'd heard good things about it from friends as well. And so that sort of pushed me into the course.
What about you, Caitlin?
Yeah, it was pretty much the same for me. I took business in my IB back in high school, and I really enjoyed it. So, and also like seeing the opportunities that the BCom program in this university offers, it kind of convinced me to take the program as well.
All right, I'm seeing a lot of nodding. Why? You've got your...
Yeah, okay. So for me, I did accounting when I was in my IGCSEs, and I really found it really interesting. And because I took like kind of like a half year free gap year, and I worked at my dad's business, so I was helping him doing like some of the accounting stuff, and I realized how important that is. So I was thinking, oh, perhaps that, you know, next time after I graduate, perhaps I can help my father out in his business. And I see how applicable it is. That, you know, business is everywhere and you can just apply it in any industry that you go. So yeah, that's the reason why I chose BCom.
Excellent. And Caitlin, I might start with you on my next one. So when did you pick your major? Or have you picked your major?
I did. I picked my major in my second year, actually. So at first, when I first came here, I didn't really know what commerce was about. And I was convinced that I was going to do accounting and finance. It didn't happen. But during my first year, I took all of the core subjects. So I got like a bit of a taste of all the possible majors that I could do. And I found that I really enjoyed economics and marketing, which are the two majors that I'm taking right now.
Excellent. And Felix, what majors are you doing? When did you decide on those?
So my majors are economics and finance, probably the most common combination, I'd say. So, but for me, given that I liked economics in school, and that was the reason I was doing commerce, I was always pretty sure I'd do an economics major. But my second major was very up in the air for me. So I went in with the plan of doing economics and management, and after that first year of doing a management core subject and a finance core subject and a variety of other core subjects, I realized that I was probably built a bit more towards finance. I didn't actually do very well in management. I didn't particularly enjoy it personally. And so I decided that I think economics and finance was sort of a good mixture of what played into my skill set and what I sort of found interesting and stuff as well. And so that's sort of how I've came to my decision.
Excellent. And were you a similar second year? Is that where we're...
I think I'm kind of like a mix between both of them, actually. So from the start, I guess I was always dead set on doing accounting and finance. Then I already decided when I was like in year 2 that I was doing accounting and finance, and I went along and took the year 2 finance subjects. Then I realized that, you know, finance is really not my thing. So it kind of seemed like my second major was a bit up in the air, just like Felix, but I was sure that I wanted to take accounting. But once I gave accounting subjects a go and I realized that it really isn't my thing, then by the third year first semester, I switched it up to marketing, and I thoroughly enjoy marketing so much better. So now my course is actually accounting and marketing. Not a very common combination, but I enjoy it. So yeah.
I really like that. So with your marketing major, is that fed into what you're doing with your breadth subjects, or?
Oh, yeah, it actually does. So it's actually quite complementary. I wouldn't say that, you know, when you're in BCom, everything kind of like links up with each other. So even though like you feel that accounting and marketing don't really match up, they actually do in certain ways that you'd be like, oh, okay, I have a marketing budget, how am I supposed to do this? Then that's when I come in with my accounting knowledge. So it's a win-win.
Excellent. Now, Caitlin, you're looking at doing engineering and commerce, so you're looking at doing the Master of Engineering. So has those engineering subjects fitted into your majors?
it's definitely very different from what we're studying in commerce.
Yeah.
But I feel like once I started taking those subjects, it's a really good balance for me, because commerce can be a bit boring sometimes with all the theories, whilst engineering has like a lot of like hands-on applications, and I actually really enjoy it. Like it's a good balance.
I enjoy it. I'm really glad there is that balance. I think that's a really important part of the BCom experience. So Felix, what are your breadth sort of interesting experiences you've had?
Well, I'll touch on postgraduate quickly. I'm planning on doing an honours year in economics, which I guess you guys didn't massively touch on, but it's just like an additional year on your Bachelor of Commerce where you sort of do extensive study in one of your majors. For me, it would be economics if I do get in. And then breadth subject wise, I've cut a long story short, I've studied Japanese from a very young age. So I did Japanese all throughout primary school and high school. And I've lived in the country. And so coming to uni, my main priority was keeping up my level of Japanese so that I didn't sort of get rusty. And so there was some really good, like high level Japanese subjects available on offer, all sorts of things like sort of like looking at Japanese literature or Japanese media and stuff like that. And so my breadth subjects have ended up being all Japanese subjects. Yes, so I mean, like, Japanese, it doesn't have a strong relation with commerce. That's more just a personal thing, which is that I have some grasp of the Japanese language and I want to keep that going, which is why my breadths were heavily influenced by that.
And one of the other really good things about doing a language at the university, if you've done like yourself, if you've done it for most of your life, there's subjects available for you. Or if you've never done a language before and you're looking at starting it, then we have subjects that are perfect for that as well. So Felix, have you got is there any subjects that have really surprised you when you've been studying your BCom?
I would personally say introductory microeconomics. So the first economic subject I ever did was probably the biggest shock for me, because I sort of came into uni having done all right in VC economics, and the first couple of weeks of that microeconomic subject were essentially revision, as Paul touched on. And so I had a really good feeling about it. And so I kind of took my foot off the gas pedal with the subject a bit. And within the blink of an eye, I was completely lost and blindsided. I think it went very maths heavy, which I sort of wasn't ready for personally. And so I think in a pure shock factor, that subject was probably the biggest surprise for me, in the sense that I wasn't expecting it. In terms of positive surprises, I'd say, I would probably say Econometrics 1, which is a second year subject. It surrounded computer, like a lot of economic coding and stuff like that, something which I had no experience in. And so I was quite scared going into that subject, having virtually no knowledge of computers and sort of coding and that sort of stuff beyond the basic open a Word document, type in it sort of thing. And but I really enjoyed the subject, both theory and the practical coding stuff. So I would say that was sort of the best positive surprise thus far.
What about you, Caitlin?
Quite similar, actually. A subject that really surprised me was introductory macroeconomics. It was actually the subject that convinced me to switch to economics. I really enjoyed the subject and how it's applied in the real world, and even the lecturers and the tutors were really great. Like we could really understand the materials really well. And I agree with you, Felix, about econometrics. I'm not doing econometrics 1, but I am doing basic econometrics. It's a level 3 subject, and it's great. So you get to learn how to code basically, but in terms of the commerce, like economics realm, which I find really interesting.
All right, Waiwa, you've listened to all these answers. Have you got your answer as to what's going to surprise you, or what has surprised you?
Yeah. I actually wanted to touch on a little bit about the breadth subjects about what I picked actually, and I actually did, because I'm doing accounting as my main major. So you can actually go into professional accounting bodies, for example, like a certified practicing accountant, a CPA, or if not chartered accountant, CA. So technically, when you choose your breadth subjects, you can actually get something that actually complements you. So like what like for example, if you want to get into an honors subject, like what Felix said, then you need to get like some of the there are subjects that can actually help you get into those pathways. So for me, I wanted to do like either the chartered accountants or CA, or if not the CPA. So for me to get like the professional accounting accreditation, I actually needed to do 3 law subjects. So that would be business law, corporate law, and also tax law. And I actually was quite shocked with tax law. It sounded really dry, but actually I feel that it's the materials, and especially my lecturer who came in and delivered the materials in a really, really interesting way that really caught my attention, and I really did enjoy that a lot. And also another subject that really surprised me was also auditing, because auditing and like law subjects, tax, you have like that perception that, oh my gosh, they're so dry, they're so boring. But what really shocked me is like the materials that were delivered was really engaging, really interesting, really piqued my interest, and I'm seriously considering a career into auditing, actually, thanks to my lecturer and his real world experience, because he was actually an auditor for one of the big firms, and he actually came here to teach us. So yeah, as Paul just mentioned, we have like really, really good lecturers, tutors that's coming from really good backgrounds that come here and teach us about things, and I found that was really interesting. So yeah.
Excellent. Now, sort of onto those more extra or co-curricular activities. So Felix, what are some of the things that you're involved in?
So I'm on what's called the Commerce Student Society, which is sort of the main social society, if you will, of the Bachelor of Commerce. And so we run a sort of, I sound like I'm selling it to you guys, no, but we run a sort of a wide array of social events. We run a yearly ball, a yearly orientation camp for first year students coming in, just lots of barbecues and things like that. And so I'm the head of events on that. I joined in first year, and I think it's really, really complemented my degree, and it's helped a lot because it sort of thrusts you into social situations with a lot of people, which is certainly good for making friends, and that, especially because when I came from school, I sort of wanted to start fresh and make a lot of new friends, and I can definitely say the society helped with that. And it's also just really rewarding stuff as well. Like now that I'm in a sort of a fairly high leadership position within the society, it's quite rewarding running an event really successfully and it going down well, and sort of seeing that positive feedback from first years, and you can sort of be like, oh, that used to be me. It's very cute in that regard. But yeah, that's my main sort of extracurricular activity. I don't do much else outside of that personally, but yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're getting some really great practical skills by those activities. What about you, Caitlin? What are some of the things you've been involved in?
I'm actually involved in quite a few stuff in school. So I'm in 2 clubs actually, the International Commerce Student Society and the Melbourne Microfinance Initiative, as a committee and as an executive in one of the clubs. And yeah, I find it really rewarding, and especially it looks really good on your resume. And also there's a bunch of clubs and societies that you can join in school that might surprise you. I'm actually one of the official Unimelp TikTok ambassador.
Good one.
Yeah, so we're in charge of making like content to promote the university. Yeah.
Wow, very TikTok, very 2021. Well done.
Very.
Now, so we have a little bit of time left, but just quickly, you mentioned the Melbourne Microfinance Initiative, but it's probably, I don't play favourites with the clubs and societies, but it's certainly a fantastic one. So I just wanted to, if you really quickly just sort of touch on what the Melbourne Microfinance Initiative does.
Right. It's very impressive, actually. So we've focused on making a social impact, and we basically divide the club into 2 different portfolios, the initiatives team and the operations team. So the initiatives team, they actually handle like real life case studies in abroad, like, and socially like troubled countries, and they help with like cases and give consultations, like consulting help. And in the operations side, we mainly focus on running events in school and promoting the club.
Yeah, it's really great that you can put that practical experience that you've learned in the classroom into a real world application. while you're still studying. So what about your extra or co-curricular activities? Always a mouthful, that one.
Yeah. So for me, I actually did join quite a few as well. And I would say that from so much that I joined, I've learned so much in like complementary to what I've learned from school, because school just gives you theoretical stuff, but this extracurricular things, I cannot like just implore you guys to go and join as many extracurricular activities as much as possible, because it really develops you so much. So I'm actually holding a few leadership positions. One of them is the Malaysians of Melbourne University, MOMU. It's a social club. So we hold a lot of like social events, and it's not just open to Malaysians. We actually open it up to a lot of other people, and we have the biggest amount of sponsors that we have, over 100 plus. So I am the sponsorship director, and I'm actually in charge of liaising with all the sponsors. So this really developed my soft skills, my communication, negotiation skills. It's just things that you can't really learn as much from school. So it was really great that I joined this, and I made so many friends. Then after that, I also did join, I made my own startup competition with my friend. It's called Last One Standing. It's a startup case competition that we just initiated by ourselves. And I think it's where what's really good is that I joined like so many other events like ICSS, the Udemy Startup Pitch Competition. I just kind of like gathered a lot of soft skills, like ideas from so many other inputs. And then from there, I kind of consolidated, and I worked with my friend and networked, and then just made one by myself. And it's a very, very fulfilling feeling once you're done with that. So yeah, I felt that was something, the highlight of my BCom experience with me, my extracurricular activities.
Oh, that's very good. I like to hear that. Now, just one last question before we finish up, and I know we've all sort of touched on it at different points, but just wanted to get an idea, you know, if you've got any sort of post BCom plans. You're unmuted, so I might start with you, YY. So if you've got any, yes. I mean, you've touched on it already, but sort of those BCom plans. You don't have to have the whole life plan, but just some of the things that you're thinking about post BCom.
Well, post BCom, I'm actually looking into either doing my professional papers in accountancy. If not, I'll be looking into like Masters of Management in accounting in Udemy actually. And what's really good is that they have the MBS Masterclass series that's coming up real soon. So it's like exactly like this event, but it's just me in all the high school students' shoes, and then I'll just be listening to like the graduate students and see what are some insights that they can give me. So I think that's like something really, really good. So either Masters in Management in accounting, or if not, professional papers in accounting.
Amazing. Caitlin, what are you doing for the rest of your life?
I think after graduating, I might look into working in Melbourne for a few years. But then after that, I'm planning on taking my Master's of Engineering, because I'm interested in product design. So I might do that after.
Oh, that's amazing.
Sure. Yeah.
I like that. I really like that. And it's a good point that I think a lot of our students do take a little bit of time and then come back to study. So the BCom is a work-ready degree that does enable students to do that.
Yeah, and it's also like, so sorry, quickly, the commerce engineering pathway actually allows you to take up to a 10-year gap before taking your master's. So I feel that's like a really good opportunity to find yourself first before locking in the Masters of Engineering.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And Felix, you were sort of touching on honours as something you're looking to go into?
Yeah, so I'd like to do an honours year in economics, ideally. Sort of study-wise after that, I'm not exactly sure. I presume I'd probably go into the workforce, but I wouldn't sort of shut down the opportunity, the sort of possibility of me doing a master's or maybe even a PhD in the future if I could. And then beyond life in that, I don't really know, wife and kids, I guess. I'd like to work in sort of public policy or something, I think in that sort of area. So economic policy, whether it be for sort of like an independent think tank or in government at a federal or state level. But yeah, beyond that, I'm not the most sort of, what's the word for it?
That's the whole point of the BCom. You're still learning about yourself.
Exactly. So. I've got time. There's no stress.
You've got time. Well, I think we'll probably leave it there. thank you very much for joining me tonight, and you've given some amazing insights to the audience, and I'm sure they've all really enjoyed everything you've had to say. Any last comments for our audience? Is there anything else you'd like to add to the session? I think it's comprehensive. That sounds pretty good. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. So if we haven't had a chance to answer any of your questions, there'll be some, you'll be able to, and you'll also be able to view this session at a later date. But if we haven't had a chance to answer your question, you can submit a form and we can answer any questions you have by just connecting with us at the uni. And there's some further sessions for the Meet Melbourne, so throughout the week. So if there are some other courses you're looking at and are interested in, please keep an eye out for those ones as well. But thank you very much for joining me.